Hi, I'm Elizabeth. This is the Bookish North. Welcome to my channel, which has been quiet for another 5 weeks or so. I guess I always get a bit melancholy when autumn arrives because I much prefer spring and summer. So when it gets darker and colder and wetter, I get a bit melancholy, and I think this year it was just a bit worse than normally because you can add the global pandemic to the mix. And for some weeks now I've just been vegetating in front of the TV watching 90s teenage soaps and not reading much and not really thinking about books much. And that's okay as long as it's for a limited period of time, which it seems to be because this weekend I finally finished 2 books again, so I'm hoping I'm getting my reading mojo back now. But I thought I would do a little catch up with some of the books that I have actually been reading over the past 2 months, because there hasn't been all that many of them. So at the beginning of August I tried to participate in Women in Translation Month, and I picked up a book I was very excited about, and it was Nora by Sophie Oksanen, and this is translated into Norwegian by Turi Farbregd. And I've read 2 books by Sophie Oksanen before. She's a Finnish Estonian writer, and I've loved the 2 books I've read before. I've read Stalin's Chaos and Purge, and particularly Purge I thought was a brilliant book. So I had high hopes for this, and then sadly I didn't like it one bit, and that was a bit of a disappointment, to put it mildly. I mean, in this book we meet Nora. We meet her at her mother's funeral. She's a young woman, and it's clear from the very beginning that she and her mother had a very close-knit relationship, and that they also had a very sort of claustrophobic relationship. It seems to have been the 2 of them against the world. And so at the funeral, Nora is sad, and she is clearly self-medicating, and she's trying to sneak off. But she's confronted by a man who says that he needs to talk to her about her mother. And throughout the book, Nora and we, the readers, learn a lot more about what her mother has been up to and why she chose to throw herself in front of a train, committing suicide. And we also learn a lot more about Nora and her story. And I would say the writing in this is as good as I've come to expect from Sophie Oksanen. She has a very in-your-face style of writing, and there's a bit of absurdity in it, and she follows sort of outcasts of society, and all of those elements are in this book as well. There's only one thing that ruins it for me, and it is definitely a question of personal taste, but this is a slight spoiler, but of something that is revealed within like the first 40 pages of the novel or so. But Nora has magical hair, and I'm just not here for it. I'm sorry. I don't like these sort of magical realism bits into my books, and in here it's just too prominent in the story to be able to ignore. So for me that just ruined the entire book, and I was not here for it. And in addition to that, I feel like the ending to the book is a bit rushed, but mainly it's the magical hair that ruins it for me. So if you can palate that kind of things in books, you might have a better experience of this than I had. But for me, no. And so I thought I would improve this record by picking up another book that's been sitting waiting for me for a long time. And it's another one where I've read 2 books by the author previously and loved both of them. And this is Beckham Barrier, Ode till min familj, by Sara Stridsberg. She's a Swedish author. This was a bit of a cheat because this is actually a Swedish copy, so it's not translated. Guess I'm doing the translation in my head. But yeah, I didn't like this either. I mean, with her two previous books that I read, Darling River and I can't remember the name of the second one, but both of those books have been a very visceral and very physical reading experience for me. Felt like this desperate need to shower after having read her books, because they are kind of disgusting and they're very physical in a way, and I've really appreciated the experience of reading those. And with this one, that element just isn't there. This is about a girl whose father is committed to a mental hospital, and she goes there to visit him, and it's about their relationship. And I got about halfway through the book and I just can't muster the interest in picking it back up again, because I feel like nothing is at stake here. I don't know what she's trying to tell me, and I'm just indifferent to the book. And this is looking very much like a DNF to me, because I haven't really picked it up for a month and a half. And you know, I might still do so and push through, but I sort of failed to see the point. So the beginning of August was not great, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna read something that I know I'm gonna love, and it's not fitting for Women in Translation Month, but at least it's a woman. So I picked up The Man Who Saw Everything by Deborah Levy, and this I really enjoyed. So that got me out of the funk, at least. So this is a book that is hard to describe, but it's about the relationship of a man and a woman he meets early on. No, it's not. It's also about the relationship of this man and another man, about him going to East Berlin when the wall was up. But there's just a lot of stuff going on here. It's about these relationships and the interconnectedness of things, and there's a bit of a weird thing going on with time here, which goes against everything I said before, that I don't like these sort of magical or unrealistic elements coming into my realistic fiction. But here, this book offers me sort of possibility to see it as a realistic. It gives me a possibility to interpret it in a realistic way, and that makes all the difference for me. And I realized that this is a very poor description of the book, but it's a hard one to describe. But yeah, I really did love this, so I'm glad that I read something that I really enjoyed. And then I picked up one more that fits the Women in Translation Month theme, and it's this tiny one. It's Daydream and Drunkenness of a Young Lady by the Brazilian writer Clarice Lispector, translated by Katarina Dodson. So this is 3 short stories, and I would say I really enjoyed 2 of them and was a bit more indifferent to the first story, which is the title story, which I didn't really get the feel for, but the other 2 had that slight absurd twist to them, where, you know, it definitely it's describing reality as we know it, but it feels like it's just one tiny change. They're perfectly realistic, they just feel slightly more intense than the reality actually is. And I think the one that particularly drew me in was the second one. It's called Love, and it's about a woman who just gets a complete rewiring of how she sees the world with something that happens, and I really enjoyed the intensity of the writing in this. So this was another highlight. And then for the rest of August, I was participating in the History Challenge, which was a 2-week readathon focusing on history books. And I'm gonna make a separate video for that, because I finished 5 books for the readathon, and then I think I've read 2 more history books after that. So I think that merits its own video. I also listened to an audiobook in September. I listened to the Life, Universe and Everything by Douglas Adams, which is the third book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, which was just a bit of fun. I mean, it was a reread for me, and I'm really enjoying the absurd fun in those books, but in small doses, so I can only do one book at a time, really. And then I had a bit of a sci-fi craving, is the word I'm looking for. So I picked up Rosewater Insurrection by Tade Thompson, which is the second book in the Wormwood trilogy. I read that in September, and then today actually I finished Rosewater Redemption, which is the third and final book in the trilogy. And I really like I really like these books. The first book in the trilogy is called simply Rosewater. It is a very inventive sort of alien invasion story. It's mainly set in Nigeria, but it does jump around a little bit. There's an alien invasion happening in London in 2012, but the alien moves to Nigeria and settles down there, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. I am not going to describe it because it would spoil some of the fun of reading the first book. But what I really appreciated about these was partly the way they felt very inventive. It's a kind of alien invasion story that doesn't resemble anything I've read before. It's not to say it's not out there, because I haven't read that many alien invasion stories, to be fair, but I really did enjoy these. And then I liked how he plays with the perspective with narration. The first book is told completely from the point of view of one person called Karu, but he is a very special person. He is what is called a sensitive, which means that he has the ability to read other people's minds. So even if it is from one person's point of view, you are privy to the thoughts of a lot of other people in the story. And then with the second book, it changes and the perspective broadens, and we follow a bunch of different people, and we get to know more about what has happened, but also more about different people's agendas in this. And then the third book, I felt wrapped this up nicely, and it also introduced another new point of view character. It's the person who has been there all along, but another point of view character, which again gave something new to the story, a unique perspective that none of the other characters could have given. So I really appreciated that. I will say at times, particularly the second book, got a bit too weird for me and a bit too abstract at times, but I did think it reeled itself in fairly well, and it wrapped up really nicely, and I really liked the ending to this series. So that's definitely a series worth checking out if you're into a weird African feeling alien invasion story. I'm out of practice here. And then the final book I also finished this weekend. I finished this yesterday. It's Funny Weather, Art in an Emergency by Olivia Lang. And this is a collection of various kinds of non-fiction writing. There are some reviews, some essays, an interview, and just various kinds of magazine pieces. Columns is what it's called in English, yes. But yeah, it's all about art and artists and authors and writing, and I really appreciated this as well. I mean, I spent a long time reading this because it's a lot of very short pieces in here, and I was reading like 1 or 2 a day, so I spent like nearly 2 months reading this, and I think that was a good way to read it, to actually give each piece the time of day and to let them sink in. And particularly for the first ones, which were sort of mini biographies of various artists, I spent a lot of time just googling and looking at pictures and stuff alongside reading her writing, because I am I've said this many times, I am fairly clueless when it comes to art, and I felt like I learned a lot from reading this. And I find it very fascinating reading about her thoughts on art and how all the things she can read into a painting, and then after having read her thoughts, looking up the painting itself and looking at it and asking myself, how on earth can she see all of those things in that painting? Because I can't. But I find it fascinating to read about, and I feel like I get a little bit wiser with each little step like this. I would say I have read all of her previous non-fiction books, and I have enjoyed all 3 of those a lot more than I did this, mainly because I feel like she is at her absolute best when she is able to go in depth, properly in depth, with a topic, which she can't do in any of these because they're like 4 or 5 pages long. So I found them interesting, and it was a good book to just have with me every day for a long period of time. But it was not as mind-blowing as I felt her previous non-fiction books were. And I hear she has another one coming. I've been reading it here, but she has another one coming that I'm very excited about. But definitely this is also worth reading. You would probably find it even more interesting than I did if you are a bit more into art and know all of the people she's writing about. But for me it was very educational, and I also really like the parts in here where she talks about various books she has read. I guess there are book reviews, and yeah, I like the way her mind works, so that was good as well. So with those 2 finished this weekend, these 2 finished this weekend, I feel like I'm probably getting back my reading mojo and this done, just ignoring the world and living in the bubble of teenage soap operas. So hopefully I will be back with another video fairly soon, and it should probably be about the books I read for the History Challenge. A wrap-up that is long overdue by now, I would say. So until then, bye bye.